The courtroom of the Hargrove County Civil Division is the kind of room that smells like old decisions. Mahogany, paper, the faint ghost of 1,000 arguments that once felt urgent and have since been reduced to file numbers. Victor Ashland has been in rooms like this before. He owns rooms like this, not literally, but in the way that certain men own spaces simply by entering them. He sits at the defense table with the posture of a man attending a ceremony held in his honor. One arm rests along the back of his chair. His other hand sits flat on the table, relaxed. He is not leaning forward. Leaning forward is for people who are worried. Victor is not worried. Victor is savoring. His attorney, Diana Hollis, has just finished her closing preliminary remarks, and they were, Victor knows, flawless, organized, factual, devastating. He watched the judge's face as Diana spoke, and he saw what he always sees when things go his way, the slow, subtle shift of a room tilting toward him. He turns his head, just slightly, toward the plaintiff's table. Eleanor is sitting there, his ex-wife of 8 months, his wife of 23 years before that. She is wearing navy blue, and she is sitting very still, and she is looking straight ahead, not at him. Victor smiles. It is not a large smile. It is precise, a small, contained curve of his mouth that holds, in its geometry, the sum of everything he has decided about this moment. She is finished. Her property claim is going to be dismissed. The lake house, the one she says she contributed to with her consulting income, the one she says she built with him, is going to remain in his name, where it belongs. He leans 1 inch toward Diana and murmurs, just barely loud enough, almost over. Diana does not respond. She is reviewing her notes. Victor leans back again, lets his gaze drift, to the ceiling, to the windows, to the gallery where a few spectators sit. He catches the eye of one, a younger man who clearly does not belong here, and holds it for a moment with that pale gray stare, until the younger man looks away. Victor's smile doesn't change. This is a man at the height of his certainty. This is a man who has just watched his attorney deliver what he is sure is a killing blow, and who is now simply waiting for the body to fall. He has no idea, not the smallest, thinnest sliver of a suspicion, of what is sitting in the manila folder on the plaintiff's table. He has no idea that the body he is waiting to fall is his. Let that last line breathe for 3 full seconds before continuing. And before we go any further, if stories like this one stay with you, if you believe that truth has its own timing and patience has its own power, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next in this courtroom, you do not want to miss. Delivery, deliberate. Let the audience resent him. Every detail should make him less likable. Let me take you back 3 days, because to understand what happens in that courtroom, you need to understand the man Victor Ashland became the moment he believed he had already won. The pre-trial motions had gone his way on Thursday. Diana had successfully argued to have 2 of Eleanor's supporting financial documents excluded on a technicality, a filing timestamp, a procedural detail so minor that most people would never even know to look for it. But Diana found it. And when she told Victor, over the phone, at 8:40 on a Thursday evening, he was silent for exactly 1 second. Then he said, "Get a reservation at Marchetti's for Saturday. Table by the window." Marchetti's is the most expensive restaurant in the county. Victor has his own table there, not metaphorically. His name is engraved on a small brass plate on the chair. He has eaten there approximately once a month for 12 years. He has never, in 12 years, taken Eleanor. On Saturday, he sat at that table with a woman named Cassandra, 29 years old, dark-haired, and wearing the earrings that had been Eleanor's anniversary gift the year they turned 20 years of marriage. Victor had taken them back as family property during the asset dispute. Cassandra did not know their history, or, if she did, she had decided not to ask. Over a bottle of wine that cost $400, Victor held a quiet dinner party for himself. He told the story of Thursday's ruling to the 2 other couples at the table, business associates, the kind of friends who are really just witnesses to a man's success. And he told it slowly, carefully, the way a man tells a story he is already planning to tell many more times. She hired some young nobody attorney, he said, turning the wine glass by its stem. Filed a claim on the lake house. 23 years of marriage. And she actually thought, she genuinely believed, he paused, shook his head, smiled, that she was entitled to something I built. One of the men at the table, a corporate attorney named Raymond, who had done work for Victor before, asked if the case was truly settled. Victor looked at him with those pale gray eyes. Raymond, he said, the only thing that isn't settled is which bottle we order next. The table laughed. Cassandra laughed last, just a half beat behind the others. On Sunday, Victor drove to the lake house. He drove with the windows down. It was early autumn. The light was gold. The air smelled of pine and cold water, and he stood on the dock for 20 minutes looking at the lake, his dock, his reflection in the water. He had bought this property 11 years ago. Eleanor had, contributed. She had contributed the income from her consulting work for the first 4 years, which had covered roughly 40% of the mortgage payments during that period. She had designed the interior. She had planted the garden on the south side. She had named the property in the way that people name places they love. She called it the Quiet House. Victor had always found that name slightly ridiculous. Standing on the dock that Sunday, he took out his phone and changed the listing name in his property portfolio app from Lake Property Hargrove to Ashland Estate. He took a photo of the dock and the water and posted it online without a caption. Just the image, just the light and the lake and the implication. 112 people liked it within the hour. He checked twice. Monday was the day before trial. Victor did not spend it reviewing strategy with Diana. He spent the morning at his barber, an appointment he had moved from Thursday specifically, so he would look precise for the courtroom. He spent the afternoon at the office, not on legal matters, but on a new acquisition he had been pursuing. He told his assistant to schedule a post-trial dinner for Tuesday evening. Assume a good outcome, he said. His assistant, who had worked for Victor for 6 years and had learned not to express opinions, typed the reservation and said nothing. At no point during those 3 days did Victor review the plaintiff's filings himself. He had people for that. Diana had the filings. Diana would handle them. Victor's job was to be Victor, present, composed, inevitable, brief. Let the irony of he didn't review the filings land for the audience. That is the thing about extreme confidence. It looks, from the inside, exactly like competence. You stop checking, because checking implies doubt, and Victor Ashland had not doubted himself in a very long time. Delivery, quieter here. This section is the counterweight, measured, precise. Let the contrast with Victor's noise speak for itself. Eleanor Ashland's Monday looked nothing like Victor's. She woke at 5:30. She had been waking at 5:30 for the past 11 weeks, since the morning after she first met with Marcus Wren and understood, for the first time, that she might actually be able to do this. Sleep had become a resource she managed, rather than something that came naturally. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table of the small rented apartment where she had lived since moving out of the main house. 2 bedrooms, 2nd floor, a window that faced a parking lot, and she opened her laptop, and she reviewed everything, not because she didn't trust Marcus. She trusted Marcus completely. But Eleanor was the kind of woman who needed to understand every element of something before she could release control of it. She had reviewed the documentation 41 times over the past 11 weeks, and she would review it twice more today, because today was the day before everything changed. The documentation in question was a financial record. Specifically, 11 years of records from Eleanor's consulting business, Ashland Property Advisory, cross-referenced against the Hargrove Lake property mortgage statements, construction permits, interior renovation invoices, and landscaping contracts. Records that showed, with the kind of precision that does not leave room for interpretation, that Eleanor Ashland had contributed $347,000 over 11 years to the acquisition, construction, and improvement of a property that bore only Victor's name. The records had always existed. They had simply never been assembled into a single, coherent, court-ready narrative. That was Marcus Wren's gift. Not drama, not argument. Evidence architecture. He had spent 11 weeks building a structure so clear, so documented, so internally consistent that dismantling it would require dismantling reality. The document that Victor's attorney had gotten excluded on a technicality, the filing timestamp error, Eleanor had known about that risk for 6 weeks. She and Marcus had discussed it on a Tuesday morning over cold coffee and a shared look of quiet acknowledgement. The excluded document was real. Its exclusion was painful, but it was not the foundation. It was never the foundation.
A breath.
This is the pivot of the whole section. The foundation was something Victor didn't know existed. 11 years ago, when Eleanor first began contributing to the Lake House mortgage, she had done something that seemed, at the time, like simple record-keeping. She had opened a dedicated business account, separate from any joint accounts, and she had routed all consulting income and all property-related payments through it. Every invoice she paid related to that property had a corresponding entry in that account, and she had, on the advice of her accountant at the time, a meticulous woman named Doris Park, who Eleanor still exchanged Christmas cards with, maintained a written log, a physical ledger, handwritten, dated and signed at the end of every month, 12 months a year for 11 years, 132 pages. Victor had never seen it. He had never asked about it. He had, during the divorce proceedings, submitted a financial disclosure that, not fraudulently, but conveniently, treated the lake property as a single-owner acquisition, citing only his own name on the deed. The deed was accurate. The omission was not. Marcus had found the ledger in the 3rd week of preparation, when he asked Eleanor a very simple question. What records do you personally have that Victor doesn't know about? Eleanor had been quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Wait here." She came back with a fireproof lockbox, the kind you keep important documents in. She set it on Marcus's desk, entered the combination, the birth year of her younger daughter, and opened it. Inside, among other papers, was the ledger, wrapped in a blue cloth the way you would wrap something you knew was valuable. Marcus picked it up, opened it, read 3 pages, set it down, looked at Eleanor. "Did you know," he said quietly, "that this changes everything?" Eleanor folded her hands in her lap. "I suspected," she said. "I wanted a professional opinion before I believed it." That was 11 weeks ago. Since then, Eleanor had not told anyone what she had. Not her sister, who called twice a week to ask how she was holding up. Not her daughters, who were worried and calling more. Not anyone. She had held it quietly, the way you hold something fragile on a long walk. Carefully, with both hands, looking straight ahead. On the morning of the day before trial, she closed her laptop at 7:45, washed her coffee cup, and set it upside down to dry on the rack beside the sink. She looked out the window at the parking lot for a long moment. Then she said, to no one in particular, in a voice that was almost a whisper, "Tomorrow, if you've ever held a truth quietly for a long time, waiting for exactly the right moment, you already know how Eleanor felt in that apartment. Stay with us, because tomorrow comes in exactly 60 seconds. Delivery, back to Victor's rhythm, smooth, controlled. Let his confidence feel almost reasonable, because that makes the fall worse." Tuesday morning, the courthouse. Victor arrives 8 minutes before proceedings are scheduled to begin. Not late. Lateness is disrespectful, and Victor does respect institutions, particularly ones he believes are about to serve him. But not early, either. Early is for the anxious. He walks through the main corridor with Diana beside him. She is briefing him on final procedural notes, the order of witness statements, a clarification on one of the exhibits. Victor listens with approximately 60% of his attention. The other 40% is cataloging the room. He sees the court reporter setting up, the bailiff near the side door, a journalist maybe, someone with a press badge, writing in a small notebook near the back wall. Victor makes a note of that. He will be quotable today. He sees Eleanor. She is already seated. Has been for some time, he guesses. Her coffee cup is nearly empty. She is speaking quietly with her attorney Marcus Wren, who Victor has done a brief but thorough research on. Young, some favorable rulings in property disputes. Nothing that concerns Victor. Diana has 20 more years, and a win rate that would make most attorneys quietly leave the profession in shame. Victor takes his seat. He does not greet Eleanor. They have not spoken directly since the deposition in March, when Victor's attorney objected to 17 of the 22 questions posed to him, and Eleanor sat across the table from him, with that same expression she is wearing now, composed, unreadable. It had annoyed him then. It annoys him now. He prefers people who show their hand. Eleanor, he has always said privately, to people he trusts, which is a very short list, was always too quiet. You never knew what she was thinking. He had found it unsatisfying in a marriage. He finds it mildly unsettling in a courtroom, but not alarming. He does not allow it to be alarming. Diana has accounted for everything. The excluded document is gone. The remaining evidence is circumstantial and based on Eleanor's own records, which Victor's team has already challenged as self-serving and unverified by any third party. Diana's argument is airtight. The deed is in Victor's name. The primary mortgage was in Victor's name, and Eleanor's contributions, to the extent they existed, were marital contributions, not ownership-establishing investments. The law here is on his side. Victor knows this because Diana told him so, and because he verified it independently with a second opinion from a property law specialist he knows socially. Everything is in order. He folds his hands on the table. He waits for the judge. He is calm the way a machine is calm, because there is no doubt left in him to disturb. 3 seconds. Let the silence feel like the moment before something breaks. Delivery. This is his last moment of complete certainty. Make it vivid. Make it almost beautiful in how wrong it is. Judge Patricia Cole enters at 9:03. The room rises. She waves them down with a single small gesture and takes her seat. She opens her reading glasses. She reviews her bench notes. She does not look at either table immediately. She looks at her papers, and this, somehow, makes her more formidable than if she had looked directly at everyone. The proceeding begins. There are preliminary matters, a procedural update, a brief exchange between the attorneys regarding the timeline of exhibits. Victor listens to none of it. He is watching the room. He is noting the journalist, who is now writing faster. He is noting the older woman in the third row of the gallery, who has been here since the doors opened, and who Victor cannot quite place. He is noting, most of all, Eleanor. And here is the thing about Eleanor in this moment. The thing that Victor is misreading with every tool at his disposal. She has not moved. She is not checking her phone. She is not whispering to her attorney. She is not fidgeting or reorganizing papers or doing any of the things that people do when they are nervous. Victor reads this as defeat already beginning to settle in. He reads her stillness as the stillness of someone who has run out of moves and knows it. He is not wrong that she has run out of moves. He is catastrophically wrong about why. Diana rises to make the final preliminary statement, a summary of the case, the position, the requested ruling. She is precise and unassailable, and Victor watches her with the quiet satisfaction of a man watching a piece of expensive machinery perform exactly as designed. When Diana sits, Victor leans toward her, very slightly, just an inch, and in a voice barely above a breath, he says, "Perfect." Diana does not respond. She is already writing her next note. Victor straightens. He lets his gaze travel, one final time, to Eleanor's table, to Marcus Wren's thin folder, sitting there at the edge of the plaintiff's table. He has noticed it before. It is slim, thin, the folder of a man who does not have much to offer. He almost feels something approaching pity. Almost. Judge Cole finishes her review of the preliminary notes, removes her glasses for a moment to rub the bridge of her nose, and then replaces them. She looks at Marcus Wren. "Plaintiff's counsel," she says, "you may proceed." Victor settles back in his chair. His last, completely comfortable moment. He does not know it yet. Do not rush. This pause is the hinge of the entire script. Hold it. Delivery. This section carries the full emotional weight of the story. Slow down. Let every beat land. Victor's fall must be felt, not just heard. Marcus Wren stands. He is not a tall man. He does not fill the room the way Diana does, the way Victor does. He stands with the ordinary uprightness of someone who does not need the room to feel his height, because what he is about to say will be felt regardless. He says, "Thank you, Your Honor." He opens the folder. And he begins. The plaintiff's position is simple. Eleanor Ashland did not merely contribute to the Hargrove Lake property as a spouse. She functioned, for 11 consecutive years, as a co-investor in its acquisition and development. We have documentation establishing $347,000 in direct, traceable, demonstrable financial contribution, distinct from any joint marital funds, to this property. A small sound from the gallery, not a gasp, more like the sound of people subtly adjusting their assumptions. Victor's jaw tightens by 1 degree. He does not look at Diana. He keeps his expression flat. Diana is already writing something, a counter-argument forming, Victor assumes. She is on it. She has this. Marcus continues. The defendant's counsel has argued that Mrs. Ashland's financial contributions were marital contributions, routine, shared, unspecific, and that argument would be compelling if it were not contradicted by 11 years of meticulous, independent documentation. He reaches into the folder. He produces a bound document, perhaps an inch thick. He holds it up, not theatrically, not for effect, just so the court can see it, and he says, "This is Mrs. Ashland's personal financial ledger, maintained from the first month of the property mortgage, November of 13 years ago, through the final entry, dated 18 months before her husband initiated divorce proceedings. It is handwritten, dated, monthly, 132 pages. He sets it on the exhibit table. Victor's attorney, Diana Hollis, has stopped writing. She is looking at the document the way you look at something that was not supposed to be in the room.
2 seconds.
Victor notices Diana's expression. This is the first crack. Victor notices that Diana has stopped writing. That small detail, the pause in Diana's pen, registers somewhere in the back of Victor's nervous system before his conscious mind has processed it. A flicker, a wrong note in music you thought you knew by heart. He keeps his face still. He is very good at keeping his face still. Marcus is speaking again. The ledger has been verified by an independent forensic accountant, whose report we are also submitting as Exhibit C. The ledger entries correspond, line by line, with bank records from Mrs. Ashland's business account, Ashland Property Advisory, LLC, which was entirely separate from any joint marital account. Every dollar entered in that ledger can be traced to a specific transaction: mortgage payment, contractor invoice, permit fee, landscaping contract. He pauses. He looks at the judge. Your Honor, we are not arguing that the deed should have been written differently at the time of purchase. Deeds reflect names. What we are arguing is that the substance of ownership, the financial reality of who built and sustained this property over 11 years, was shared, and the documentation proves it with a precision that leaves no interpretive room. Judge Cole is no longer looking at her notes. She is looking at Marcus. Her reading glasses are on. Her expression is unreadable, but her attention is, unmistakably, total. Diana stands. Your Honor, we object to the introduction of this document. It was not included in the plaintiff's original disclosure. Marcus, it was filed as a supplemental exhibit on the 14th of last month, within the permitted window and with full notice to opposing counsel. I have the filing confirmation. He produces a single page, sets it beside the ledger. Diana looks at it. She looks at it for 2 full seconds, and in those 2 seconds, in the quality of her silence, Victor reads something he has never read in Diana Hollis in 6 years of working together. Uncertainty. This is the moment Victor's world begins to move beneath his feet. Do not rush it, Victor says, very quietly, leaning toward Diana. What is that? It is not a question. It is a demand dressed as a question. Diana says, equally quietly, I received that filing. I assessed it as supplementary. I didn't expect. She stops, composes herself, returns her attention to the front of the room. Judge Cole says, objection overruled. The document was properly filed. Continue, Mr. Wren. Marcus continues. He walks the court through the ledger methodically. Not every entry, but the shape of it. 11 years, 132 pages, 100 by 100, 1,000 by 1,000, year by year. He cites the forensic accountant's verification. He cites 3 specific contractor invoices signed by Eleanor, paid by Eleanor's business account for structural improvements to a property that was described in the defendant's disclosure as a single-owner acquisition. He is not raising his voice. He is not performing. He is simply, systematically, making reality visible. Victor is no longer watching the journalist. Victor is watching the judge. And the judge, the careful, silver-haired, unimpressed Judge Patricia Cole, is turning pages. She is asked for the ledger, and she is turning pages. And she is not asking questions, and she is not stopping. And her expression has shifted into something Victor has never personally encountered before. The face of a person who is reading something that will change the outcome of what she was previously planning to say. Victor feels it. He feels the room tilt, not dramatically, not all at once. The way a boat tips on water, slowly, then faster than you expect. Stay right here, because the next 60 seconds of this story are the ones that people remember, the ones that feel when they happen, almost like justice you can physically see. Marcus Wren says, "Your Honor, there is one final element we would like the court to note." He reaches into the folder, that thin, impossible folder, one last time. He produces a photograph, 8 by 10, black and white. He places it on the exhibit table without a word. The photograph is dated. It is from the first year of the property's construction. It shows the lake house in its earliest state, framing up, walls not yet built, and in front of it, standing in work boots and a light jacket, is Eleanor Ashland. She is looking at the camera. In her hand is a rolled set of blueprints. Behind her, barely visible in the upper right corner of the frame, is a construction sign. On the sign, in large printed letters, are the words, Ashland Property, Eleanor Ashland, project owner. Victor stares at the photograph. His mouth is slightly open. Just slightly, just enough. Diana says nothing. The room says nothing. Judge Cole looks at the photograph for a very long moment. Then she looks at Victor, not with judgment, with something quieter and more damaging than judgment. Recognition. Victor Ashland is the kind of man who understands power structures. He has built a career on reading them. And in this moment, sitting in that mahogany room under flat white lights, he reads the structure of this room with perfect clarity for the first time today. And he understands that he has lost. Not probably, not possibly, not there may be an appeal. He has lost. The certainty that has been his permanent companion, that architectural, unshakable belief in his own inevitable victory, collapses. Not loudly. There is no sound to it. It is the most silent catastrophe that has ever happened to Victor Ashland. The walls of something he built over decades come down in the space of a single breath, and the man who remains sitting in that chair after they fall is smaller, just slightly. Just enough to be visible to anyone looking closely. His hand, the one that had been resting flat and relaxed on the table, curls into a loose fist. He does not speak. Diana begins to formulate a response. You can see her doing it, the professional machinery of her mind assembling a counter-argument from damaged parts. But when she opens her mouth, what comes out is weaker than anything Victor has ever heard from her. Your Honor, the plaintiffs' contributions, while documented, should be considered in the context of. Judge Cole removes her glasses. Diana stops. The judge looks at both tables. Then she says, I am going to call a 30-minute recess. When we return, I will be prepared to issue my ruling. She gathers her papers. She stands. The room stands. She walks out. Victor sits back down before most people do. Let the weight of it settle. Delivery. This section is the reckoning. Quiet and devastatingly precise. No gloating from the narrator, just observation. During the recess, Victor and Diana went to the small consultation room adjacent to the main hallway. I know what happened in that room only from what was visible through the glass panel in the door. Frosted glass, shapes and shadows. No words. But the shapes told enough of the story. Diana was standing. Victor was seated. She was speaking. He was not. At one point, her hands moved, the gesture of a person explaining something difficult, something that requires spatial illustration. Victor's shape did not move for most of it. At one point, he stood, turned toward the window, stood there for a long time. Then he sat back down. The recess lasted 35 minutes, not 30. When Judge Cole returned and delivered her ruling, she did so in the measured, deliberate language of a court that has made up its mind and is now making a record. She cited the ledger. She cited the forensic verification. She cited the construction photograph and the signed contractor documents. She noted that the financial evidence established, to a clear and documented standard, that Eleanor Ashland had functioned as a co-investor in the property over 11 years through a separate and verifiable financial account, with no reasonable interpretation that these were routine marital contributions. The lake house, the property Victor had photographed from the dock, the one he had renamed in his portfolio app, the one he had described to dinner guests as something he built, was ruled to be subject to equitable distribution. Eleanor was awarded a 44% share of the assessed property value, to be settled within 90 days. She was also awarded costs. Victor sat through the ruling without moving. Diana sat beside him without moving. The journalist in the back was writing without stopping. When Judge Cole finished, and the room began to shift and settle, Victor remained in his chair. Diana gathered her papers. She said something to him, quietly, professionally, the tone of a woman concluding a business matter, and he nodded once. She left. He sat alone at the defense table for approximately 4 minutes. I watched him from my seat in the gallery. I want to be honest about what I saw, because I think honesty matters more here than drama. He did not weep. He did not rage. He did not make a scene. Victor Ashland is not the kind of man who lets his collapses be public spectacles, even when they already are. What he did was this. He sat very still, and he looked at the exhibit table, where the ledger still sat, that bound, 132-page document that Eleanor had maintained for 11 years, and he looked at it the way a person looks at something that has defeated them so completely they can't yet process it as real. The watch on his wrist, the expensive Swiss one, caught the light for a moment. He looked down at it. Then he looked up again. He stood, straightened his jacket, picked up his leather portfolio, and he walked out of the courtroom, alone. The legal consequences continued well past that day. The 44% valuation of the property, a property that had appreciated substantially over 11 years, largely due to improvements documented in that very ledger, came to just over $800,000. The 90-day settlement window would prove tight. Victor's assets were less liquid than his lifestyle suggested. There were, in the months that followed, refinancings and adjustments, and a period of professional turbulence that his associates noticed and discussed. The dinner reservation his assistant had made for Tuesday evening, assuming a good outcome, was canceled. The brass plate on his chair at Marchetti's still bears his name. He has not, in the months since, returned.
Let the silence be part of the story.
Delivery. This is the emotional resolution. Warm, but not triumphant. Earned quiet. The kind of ending that stays with people. Eleanor Ashland left the courthouse at 11:47 in the morning. She thanked Marcus Wren on the courthouse steps, shook his hand, both of hers around his one, and said something that made him smile. She had her handbag on one shoulder and her navy jacket buttoned against the autumn chill. She walked to her car alone. She did not call anyone from the steps. She did not post anything. She did not stop to speak to the journalist who approached her and was gently, politely redirected by Marcus. She drove to a small diner 8 blocks from the courthouse. She sat at a window table. She ordered coffee and a piece of apple pie, and she sat there for 40 minutes, looking out at the ordinary street, people walking, cars moving, the world continuing in its reliable way, and she was very, very quiet inside herself. Later she told her daughter, the older one, who had been following the case with barely contained anxiety, that she had felt, in that diner, something she hadn't felt in almost 2 years. She felt like herself, not victorious, not vindicated exactly, though the ruling was both of those things, but herself, the version of herself that existed before she learned to make herself smaller, to frame her contributions as secondary, to treat her own work as supporting material in someone else's story. That version had not gone away. It had simply been waiting, very patiently, very quietly, for a moment that called for it. Within 6 months, she reopened Ashland Property Advisory under her maiden name, Eleanor Porter Consulting, In the first year, she took on 4 new clients and turned away 2. She was selective in a way she had not allowed herself to be before. The office she rented had a window that faced a courtyard garden. She planted something in a pot on the sill, something small and slow-growing and alive. She still wears the locket, the small one, on the chain beneath her collar, the one no one in that courtroom ever knew about. Inside it is a photograph, her daughter's, when they were small, a reminder of the reasons she did not give up, the reasons she kept the ledger, the reasons she waited. A long one. Let the image of the locket sit for a moment before you continue. I've thought about this story many times since that autumn morning. What I keep returning to is not the ruling, or the ledger, or even the photograph on the exhibit table. What I keep returning to is the smirk, Victor's smirk, at the beginning of the day, when he looked at Eleanor and decided she was already finished, when he looked at that thin folder and felt something close to pity. Arrogance, I think, is never really about other people. It is always, at its core, about the fear of being ordinary, about the compulsive need to establish, in every room, that you are the most important element present. Eleanor never needed to be the most important element in any room. She just needed to be the most prepared, and she was. If Eleanor's patience moved something in you, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who believed their confidence was the same thing as their strength, drop a comment. Tell me when you knew, when you watched this story and felt the turn coming. And if you're still watching, if you made it all the way here, then you already know something important. The people who stay quiet and build carefully are never as finished as the smug ones believe. Like this video, subscribe to Karma's Heiress, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because truth, when it is patient enough, always finds its way into the room.